Hi everyone, this is Katie at Moonflower Moments. Today I would like to do a VR to Simon at the Hermit's Cave titled Most Overlooked Decks. This type of VR is incredibly important to me. Just this practice in general of combing over your decks and seeing what you're not using is important to me. I have a small collection, about 65 decks, and so I do try to rotate my decks weekly and utilize new things every single week. But in the process of that, I do notice that there are some decks that I absolutely adore. I absolutely love that even still with the rotation aren't being used as often as I would like. So to start us out with, I will start with the Oracle decks. So the first one is titled Story Through Stone. This is created by Sandera Quackenbush. Currently it is out of print, but on her website, which I'll leave below in the descriptions, she says that there's going to be another print run in summer of 2024. So as you can tell, these cards do not have any keywords. There's no guidebook, there's nothing. So when I first got into tarot, I really gravitated towards Oracle decks that had this sort of imagery, just a base image that you had to feel your way through with intuition. I think it was one of the ways that I really tried to test myself, to test my gut, to really develop my intuitive sense. And so I oftentimes like to use this when I'm reading for others. I find that when I'm reading for my friends, the stones tell me exactly what I need to hear, even if it's something that's more complex than just one keyword. So I find that this imagery to be incredibly expansive. So a little bit of history about the deck. Sandera Quackenbush, her father and her grandfather worked at a national park, and they used to go around and collect stones that they could tell had a story in them. And so ultimately, all of these are natural stones. Nothing has been changed or altered or anything like this. And I think it's a deck that is underutilized in my collection because it is such a great intuitive tool. It's beautiful, as you can tell by the rocks or the crystals that are on my desk here. I really do enjoy things that are Jasper-esque. So these reds and these beige colors, I mean, they're absolutely stunning to me, but it is something that gets overlooked. So this is going to be the first deck that I primarily try to utilize this summer to get back into that rhythm, to get back into trusting my gut. Because ultimately, when you look at an image like this, you do have to sit with it for a while. And so this is the first one. And that was Story Through Stones by Sandera Quackenbush. The next oracle that I have is one that is more common. This is Southern Gothic Oracle. So I love this cardstock for one. I love this matte one. I got one of the earlier editions of this, so this one doesn't have the cornbread card like some of the other ones. But I do have the expansion pack with the haunts. I do find this imagery to be incredibly evocative. I bought this deck when my husband and I were living in Alabama. We've since then relocated to Louisiana, back to the state where I'm from. And so I think that at the time that I was reading with this deck, in Alabama, the dogwood blossoms were in bloom. You definitely had more people that were closely aligned with the Appalachian style of witchcraft, and you could feel that influence when you were up in the mountains and you were talking to people that were practitioners. You had the kudzu. So I think this deck represents a specific point in my life. Even though it is the Southern Gothic Oracle, some of the imagery I relate to, but it really does fit more with a creator's home area, which is Southern Tennessee. So I think that's part of the reason that this is overlooked, is that it doesn't represent where I'm at. But, you know, I say that, but, you know, this is the live oak card. I have two beautiful live oaks that are in my backyard that I sit underneath almost every single day. So I think it just depends. Some of the imagery is really potent and fits where I am right now, and some of it represents who I was a year ago. But needless to say, even with that, it always helps to go revisit who you are and the images that shaped you. So this is a deck that definitely is overlooked and that needs to be addressed. Now I'm going to move on to tarot. The next one is the Dinosaur Marseille. This one is still available on Etsy, though it is indie. So I'll leave a link in the description box below. Check out these backs, I love them. So when I was in college, I got to choose a science class, and naturally I decided to study dinosaurs. So there was a geology class that was dedicated just to dinosaurs. There were actually 2 of them, and I took both of them. So recently, after graduating college, I knew the name of pretty much every single one of these dinosaurs right off the bat. And so when I saw that this deck was available, I jumped on it immediately. It was pretty costly to get from England, just with the shipping cost, but I thought that it would be a great investment, and it really is. Now that I have a better understanding of Marseille, I look at some of these images and I have a deeper understanding and a deeper place of where they've come. You can tell that, but one of the things that makes it challenging is not only are the titles in French, but these are not the traditional French Marseille titles. So there is that extra step to where not only are you translating from French to English, but then also some of the titles have shifted. And I mean, the title shifts fit with what is in the deck. So for example, the volcano for the tower, I mean, that totally and absolutely fits. However, it does add that extra step into the reading process for me. So I do find myself primarily using this in winter. I like to use this with Goblin Market and other decks that are a little bit more whimsical and satirical and have a lot of white space. So it does have a pretty solid place in my collection, but I mean, look at this imagery. I should be using that in the summer as well. So this was the first of my overlooked tarot decks. That would be the Dinosaur Marseille. I will put the full name in the description box below. So on the topic of Marseilles, I'm about to show one that I know everyone was obsessed with last summer. So we've all seen at this point the Squid Cake Marseille. I got this in and I thought that it was going to be my new soul deck. I connected with the imagery immediately. The guidebook is phenomenal. I had a love affair with this deck, a very intense love affair where pretty much this was the only thing I was using for a solid 2 to 3 months. I think what ended up happening is that I switched over to the CBD Marseille, which is a little bit more traditional, so I stepped away from this. But now that it is spring season and we have these beautiful pastel pinks, I definitely believe that I'm going to be back to this one soon. So the next one is one that I followed before it was even on Kickstarter. I followed the creators on Instagram, and this is the Animal and Botanical Tarot. This one is an indie deck, and this one is definitely overlooked in my collection. The imagery is stunning. The colors are incredible. We have lots of details. Each animal, I think, is really well selected, and what really surprised me, of course, it's called Animal and Botanical. I wasn't expecting that you would get a write-up on an insect, a plant, and then also a main animal for every single card. And then some cards actually have more than one plant as well. So there's a lot of information that's packed into this card to where if you find it overwhelming to say, for example, what this plant is or what sort of animal this is. I know butterflies really well. That's one of my hobbies, is to study and learn about butterflies. So I know exactly how this butterfly relates to the image. So I think in that case, having multiple things in a card for you to gravitate to helps you to understand this. As a matter of fact, here, I definitely don't remember what this plant is, and I definitely don't remember what this guy is, but I know that this butterfly is a great example of the Wheel of Fortune, because you can see right here the butterfly has just emerged from their chrysalis. And so ultimately time moves on no matter what. Your body ages no matter what. I think it's a great reminder of how we don't have much control overall within the Wheel of Fortune. So this one's overlooked. I do like to pair this one with Gentle Tarot when I read with it. I find that they contrast well together. Gentle Tarot having the bright colors, this having the bright colors, but this chunky white border looks really nice to the larger borders next to the Gentle Tarot. But this is one that is on my radar to use more this summer. The next one is Tabula Mundi. This was one of my first decks that I got, and boy, I still love it. This is my Thoth deck. So even though I've I'm not very far into my Thoth studies. I'm not very confident with my Thoth studies. This imagery appeals to me much more than the traditional imagery. When I got this in, I was pairing this with Serpent and Peacock a lot, which is probably my second favorite deck of all time. I have the first edition, the really quacky, quirky one with the copy and paste images. It's a hoot. Like, I really love that deck. And I used to read this one alongside it. Then I got other things that I would read with Serpent and Peacock, and this one just sort of fell to the wayside. But it's a shame to me. I think it's because I ordered this in the smaller edition. I didn't realize how small it would be, that I primarily use this to add on to readings. And I think had I purchased the larger cardstock, it wouldn't be as much of an issue with that. But I've only done readings with this deck by itself a couple of times. And so that's one of my goals in order to give this deck the attention that it needs, is to fall into a place where I'm doing larger spreads with it. I really should be able to do massive spreads with this and not just rely on it as a clarifier. But I think part of that is just me being hesitant about using the Thoth system at all. Oh, I'm so worried that, you know, because I don't know all of the cards yet, I'm going to be worried. But, you know, look how intuitive this imagery is. Even if you don't know all of the traditional meanings and all of the traditional symbolism, you can still look and see, look at these bees right here and this beautiful heron. A lot of that can be symbolic of the Queen of Cups. And with the quartz and the pages being similar throughout, it's not as if I would be starting all over. So that's Tabula Mundi. The next one, I love this bag for it, is Spirit Keepers Tarot. I do still use this one regularly, but not to the extent that I thought I would. So I thought that this was going to be something that I read with pretty much every single week, and I still read with it often. I probably reach for it once every 2 months or so. But I really thought when I got this in that this was going to be it for me. I think that I've been very intimidated by the larger books. You don't have to know everything that's in this card in order to be able to study it. And I recognize this. I do find this to be an incredibly easy read right away. I mean, you also have keywords here. So there's a lot of different ways that you can put your foot into it and just go ahead and jump into interpreting the imagery and then also what is written on the card. But I think that there's some inherent pressure on me that because I bought the big book, oh, I want to study it, I want to study it, I want to study it. And I just need to honor the fact that tarot is a lifetime commitment. It's not something that you're going to learn overnight. Every layer that you add to it is meant to deepen your understanding, but if you try to rush through all of those layers and you try to rush through all of that learning at once, you end up missing a lot. And so I think I just need to take my time and recognize that right now I love the cards, I love the imagery, this is some of my favorite cardstock in the world, and so I need to appreciate the deck for that. And then when I'm ready to study it deeper, know that I have that as an option and it's waiting for me. So this is the Spirit Keepers Tarot. Now last year really was the year of love affairs for decks, and this one was no exception. I think that this is the deck that actually kicked Squid Cake off my list a while back. This is the Klimt Tarot. I saw this on Marlena Teresa's channel, and the way that she talked about it made me fall immediately in love with it. I'm a sucker for the golden decks from Los Scarabeo. I pretty much have all of them at this point. And so when I saw that this had this gold embellishment, I knew that I had to get it. I love the imagery, this artwork. I love how slender some of these people are. They definitely fit the time period in which Klimt was depicting, the circumstances in which he was living through. But I also love how deeply sensual this artwork is. So there's something that's so beautiful about this moon card with her being wrapped up in the fetal position. There's something soft, yet the bodies are angular. It's beautiful. If you love decks with a lot of juxtaposition, it is beautiful. And this is one of my absolute favorite Two of Swords ever. I think it really does describe that anguish of making that decision and knowing that the decisions that you make will have lifelong impacts for you. Yeah, I love this deck. This is one that I should be reading with every single week, and I just don't. So this is the Klimt Tarot. I could sit here and show all the artwork from it. I really could. All right, the next one. I know I've seen this on several other people's overlooked deck list. This is the Somnia Tarot. This was my first deck that wasn't plant-based, that wasn't a traditional, you know, RWS clone, say for example, like the Goddess Tarot and the Green Witch Tarot. I think that even though this imagery is RWS in style, the emotive experience of this deck, the emotional experience of this deck is not something that is like anything else that I have in my collection. I tried to use this deck for shadow work, and I do think that it fits that purpose well, but it almost felt like I was trying to fit it into a place where it didn't belong. So now I've really tried to shift my understanding of this deck to not be shadow work, but just to look at the base imagery. So this is my favorite depiction of Seven of Swords of all time ever. I love how he is carrying these swords on the chest on his back. So, you know, he didn't have a sheath for him to carry his sword, so he manufactured a new way to do this. So it really does bring to mind the unconventionality of the Seven of Swords, of the rogue thinking, of thinking about things in a new way. And so when I use it as an opportunity to expand my understanding of the tarot and expand my interpretation of the cards, I find that it works really well. But if I tried to assign it, oh, this is going to be my shadow work deck, and I even consecrated it for that, it doesn't work for me. And so I think that I know when I need to grab this deck. I'll be sitting down sometimes and be like, okay, Somnia is not at my desk, but I need to grab Somnia. And so I think in particular with this deck, I have to let it lead that way. And I know that when it's ready for me to read with it, it'll call to me, but I would still like to read with it more. So this is Somnia. Then my next deck is my favorite of all time. So this is a Peggy bag, and I just love, let me see, I love this match. So the bag's been beaten up, but I don't, that by any means, that is not Peggy's artwork. I'm just really hard on my bags. So this is the Illusor Tarot. I love this deck. Sometimes when I read with this deck, I feel like the images, when I sink into them, they move. So they feel as if they're not static. They're very dynamic. I love everything about this World card, how it is definitely shaped like a woman's vagina. It really is, if you just look at it. And you can tell that there's some of that same imagery in the RWS, so I love that concept of the Fool walking through and being birthed again. I think a lot of the imagery is very intuitive. You can see it in your face where things are coming from, but then there are other places where things go their own way. So the Fool, there's almost a sense of here, like, who do you want to be? Who do you want your identity to be? And I find the keywords to be really spot on. In many cases, this deck does move in a Thoth direction, and now that I've studied Thoth a little bit, I can see that. So I think for some people, being told that this is an RWS, it might put them off, because some of the keywords just don't fit RWS at all. Like, for example, Two of Wands possibilities, you can definitely see that. So I will say, every time I open up the bag for this deck, I fall in love with it all over again. Sometimes I like to lie to myself and pretend that this is not in my top 5, and I say, oh, well, this would be in my top 5 and not this. But then as soon as I open this up, I'm like, oh no, this is in my top 5. Absolutely, this is in my top 5. Once you actually put the deck in my hands, I know nothing else compares. I mean, look at that beautiful imagery. So right now, this deck, the creator is still selling it in bulk, but the last time I checked, he wasn't selling it individually. I will leave a link down below in case that changes, but I know that many people bought this deck at once. A lot of people rehomed it, and it's just always stuck with me. This is one that's never gonna leave, and I'll leave it there. for Judgment Resurrection. As someone who really loves butterflies, it's perfect. So these were my most overlooked decks. Please comment below and let me know what your most overlooked deck is. I would really like to see what is being used and what's not being used. And you know, I also want to know in the comments too, do you feel a pressure to use the decks that you're not using? Or are you someone who just likes to collect for the sake of collecting? I think that it's fine to fall anywhere on the spectrum with that. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time and see you next time.